some inventions just cut right through history, don't they? Becoming instantly recognizable, loaded with meaning. The AK-47, you could argue it's the most iconic firearm in the world. It's definitely one of those.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a symbol that just pops up everywhere. Conflicts, revolutions, even, in movies and culture. And the sheer number, it's estimated, 100 million units produced? Yeah. That's staggering. It really makes you stop and think.
It does. That kind of ubiquity,
yeah.
It doesn't happen by accident. It really speaks to a design that met a very specific, very urgent need, and then maybe took on a life entirely its own.
Exactly. And that's what we're really digging into today on this deep dive from the All Sorts podcast. We're not just looking at the rifle, the metal and wood, but at the remarkable life and legacy of the man who dreamt it up, Mikhail Kalashnikov, the mastermind, really, behind this iconic weapon. And his story is every bit as compelling as the object itself.
His life's path is just fascinating, from his early experiences, growing up in Siberia, to the creation that would totally define his legacy. It's a story deeply tangled up with the massive events of the 20th century.
Yeah, think about it. A young guy gets wounded in the brutal fighting of World War II, and from that experience comes this drive, this need to create a weapon that would, for better or worse, just change the face of warfare. That's a powerful story right there.
It is, and it takes us beyond just the technical specs, the nuts and bolts of the AK-47. Today, we want to explore the historical forces that kind of shaped its creation, the ingenuity of the design itself, and the really complex story of the man behind it all. You, our listener, you probably instantly recognize the silhouette of the AK-47, right?
Mm-hmm.
Today, we're going much deeper into the personal journey and the design thinking of Mikhail Kalashnikov himself.
Okay, but before we pull back the charging handle on this incredible story, just a quick word for you, our fellow adventurers in knowledge. If your curiosity is humming like ours is here at the All Sorts podcast, then make sure you're, locked and loaded for even more captivating content. Head over to YouTube, subscribe to the All Sorts podcast channel. That simple click, it really fuels our explorations into the world's most fascinating stories.
Definitely.
And while you're there, take aim at our extensive back catalog seriously. Each deep dive is like a carefully crafted expedition into a whole new realm of understanding. Don't let your quest for knowledge run dry. Follow the All Sorts podcast on X, Instagram, and Threads for more, thought-provoking insights and behind-the-scenes glimpses. Consider this your rallying cry. Join the All Sorts podcast community and let's embark on these journeys of discovery together. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Mikhail Kalashnikov. Born in Western Siberia, November 10th, 1919. And incredibly, he was one of 18 children. What does that even tell us about his early life?
Wow, 18. Well, growing up in such a huge family in, rural Siberia in that period. Immense societal change happening in Russia.
Mm-hmm.
It likely instilled in him a very strong sense of practicality, resourcefulness.
Right.
Large families back then, they often relied on every single member contributing. It probably fostered a real hands-on approach to solving problems.
Then, 1938, he gets called up by the Red Army. And interestingly, his first role wasn't like frontline infantry. His talent for mechanics, his knack for tinkering, led him to work on improving equipment for Soviet tank regiments. So even before the AK-47, he was showing this aptitude for design and innovation, specifically in a military context.
That's a really key point to understand, yeah. His experience before the AK-47 shows he wasn't just some amateur fiddling around. The military clearly recognized his technical abilities early on, and that gave him a foundation in engineering principles and, crucially, the specific needs of military hardware.
Okay, and now for what you might call the inciting incident. World War II, 1941, he gets wounded a shoulder wound during the Battle of Bryansk. And it's while he's recovering in the hospital that he has this pivotal moment, this realization. He overhears his fellow soldiers talking, lamenting the clear disadvantage they faced against German troops who had, superior automatic weapons.
Right. That direct feedback, straight from soldiers on the front lines facing an enemy that was technologically superior, at least in terms of small arms. That was undoubtedly a powerful motivator for him. It wasn't some abstract problem he was trying to solve in a lab. It was a very real, very urgent need expressed by his comrades.
He famously said, "So I designed one. I was a soldier and I created a machine gun for a soldier." That really just sums up his motivation, doesn't it? A soldier solving a soldier's problem. Simple as that.
It does.
Yeah.
It really highlights his empathy for the common soldier, the guy in the trench, and his desire to give them the tools they actually needed to fight effectively. His focus wasn't on, abstract engineering challenges. It was rooted in the practical, harsh realities of combat, as his fellow servicemen experienced it.
So the war ends, but that initial spark, that idea, it keeps burning. Work on what would eventually become the AK-47 really starts to gain momentum. And it's important to stress, like you said, Kalashnikov wasn't working in a vacuum or starting completely from scratch.
No, not at all.
His early designs, including that 1945 prototype, they clearly incorporated successful elements from existing firearms. Things like the German STG-44, the American M1 Garand. He was building on what was already out there. He wasn't exactly reinventing the wheel.
Yeah, exactly. Innovation, it often involves taking existing ideas and, refining them or combining them in new, more effective ways. Kalashnikov and his team, they were clearly studying successful designs from other countries, identifying key features that could be adapted and integrated into their own weapon. It's a hallmark of practical engineering, learning from what actually works.
And what emerged was described as a kind of hybrid. It effectively combined the firepower of a submachine gun with the range and accuracy of a rifle. Can you break down what that meant, like in practical terms, for a soldier on the ground?
Sure. Think about typical infantry fights back then. You had submachine guns, right? Great rate of fire up close, but their effective range was pretty limited. Then you had standard rifles, better range, better accuracy, but a much lower rate of fire. The AK-47 aimed for that sweet spot in between, a weapon that could deliver a significant amount of fire at moderate ranges, say a few hundred meters, with reasonable accuracy. That made it really versatile for all sorts of combat scenarios.
And the timeline is just remarkable, really. By 1947, only a couple of years after serious development really kicked off, the design had matured into the AK-47 we recognize. And by 1949, boom, it was officially adopted by the Soviet military, becoming standard issue. That's an incredibly rapid transition from concept to widespread deployment.
It really speaks to the urgency, doesn't it? The Soviet military clearly needed a weapon like this, and Kalashnikov's design was apparently effective and suitable right off the bat. Remember, the Cold War was just starting to heat up, and the Soviets were really keen to modernize their armed forces quickly.
And it wasn't just about the firepower, was it? The AK-47 quickly got this reputation for its simplicity, its incredible reliability, like legendary reliability, even in the absolute worst conditions, and just how easy it was to use. Why were those specific factors so crucial?
Oh, massively crucial. For a mass-produced military rifle, especially for an army like the Soviet Union's that relied heavily on conscripts, guys with maybe varying levels of training, simplicity of design is just paramount.
Makes sense.
It translates directly to easier manufacturing, less complex maintenance in the field, and quicker training times. And that reliability in harsh environments, think mud, dust, freezing cold, intense heat. It ensures that a weapon will actually function when it's needed most. That's a critical advantage in combat.
Let's dig a bit deeper into those design features then. You mentioned it's gas-operated and selective fire. Now, selective fire means it can fire semi-automatic, one shot per trigger pull, or fully automatic, just holding the trigger down, and it uses a long-stroke gas piston system. What's the core benefit of that specific mechanism?
Okay, the long-stroke gas piston system is really fundamental to the AK-47's legendary reliability. Basically, when you fire around, some of the high-pressure gas produced is tapped off and directed into a cylinder above the barrel. This gas pushes a piston, which is directly connected to the bolt carrier, backward with considerable force. This strong direct action ensures that the whole operating cycle, pulling out the spent cartridge, loading a new one, happens forcefully and consistently. Even if the weapon is dirty or hasn't been perfectly maintained, the looser tolerances between the moving parts compared to some other designs also really contribute to this resistance to fouling and grime.
So less finicky, more robust in real-world, messy conditions. Got it. Makes total sense. Now the ammunition, that 7.62 by 39 millimeter cartridge, what were the design thoughts behind choosing that specific round?
Right. The 7.62 by 39 millimeter cartridge, that was a deliberate Soviet development. It was designed to be a kind of intermediate cartridge. The idea was to offer a better balance between, say, stopping power and manageable recoil compared to the bigger, more powerful rifle rounds at the time, while also having a greater effective range than your typical pistol or submachine gun rounds. It was really optimized for those close to medium range fights that they anticipated in modern infantry combat.
And in terms of just sheer firepower, we're looking at a rate of fire around 600 rounds per minute on full auto, And the standard magazine held 30 rounds, but you mentioned you could also get 10, 20, and 40-round box mags, and even a 75-round drum. That's a significant amount of potential firepower for one soldier.
It is, yeah. That capability for sustained fire, especially combined with a reasonably high-capacity magazine like the 30-rounder, provided a really significant tactical advantage in certain situations.
Yeah.
It let soldiers lay down a volume of fire to suppress the enemy or engage multiple targets quickly. And having those different magazine capacities offered some flexibility too, trading off weight for ammo count depending on the mission.
Let's talk about the construction itself. Early AK-47s had what's called a milled receiver, right? Made from a solid block of steel. But later, they transitioned to a stamped steel receiver with the AKM model. What was the reason for that change in manufacturing?
The main driver, really, for switching to stamped steel receivers was all about streamlining production and cutting manufacturing costs. Milling a receiver from a solid block of steel is a much more time-consuming and material-intensive process.
Now you're carving it out.
Exactly. Stamping, on the other hand, involves forming the receiver from sheets of steel. It's much faster, much cheaper, allows for mass production on a huge scale, which was obviously crucial for equipping a massive army like the Soviet Union's, and also for exporting the rifle cheaply. Now, initially, the Soviets did face some challenges getting the stamped receiver technology just right, which led to a brief period where some AK-47s continued to be made with the older, milled receivers. Sometimes people call these the Type 2, or unofficially the AK-49. But they eventually figured it out. They overcame those hurdles. And the AKM, which was introduced in 1959, became the definitive version with the stamped receiver. It also added some other features, like that distinctive slanted muzzle brake to help control the muzzle rise during rapid fire.
So a definite move towards greater efficiency and mass production, but it sounds like without sacrificing too much in terms of durability.
Pretty much, yeah. They found a good balance. And that simplicity in construction, that ease of making it, must have played a massive role in its global spread, too.
Oh, absolutely.
The ease and the relatively low cost of manufacturing just made it accessible to countries with, varying levels of industrial capability.
Yeah.
It also made it easier for other nations to produce their own versions, sometimes under license, sometimes not.
And those iconic magazines, the standard 30-round one with that very distinctive curve, that curve isn't just for aesthetics, is it?
No, not at all. The curvature is specifically designed to make sure the 7.62 by 39 millimeter cartridges feed reliably. Because of the tapered shape of that particular round, the curve is necessary to allow them to stack properly and move smoothly up into the chamber. And you're right, they were built tough. Early ones used heavy steel, later they moved to lighter stamped steel, and eventually steel-reinforced plastic or polymer. There are even stories, anecdotes of soldiers using empty mags as hammers or bottle openers, which really speaks to how robust they were built.
Okay, so let's put it together from a soldier's point of view. You've got a weapon that's relatively easy to learn, works even when it's caked in mud, packs a decent punch, has good capacity, and is built like a tank. It's really not hard to see why it became so incredibly widely adopted, first within the Soviet bloc and then just everywhere. It became, like we said earlier, synonymous with liberation movements and insurgencies, a real symbol of resistance in so many parts of the world.
Its key characteristics, that reliability, the simplicity, and crucially, its availability, made it the ideal weapon for irregular forces, for guerrilla movements operating in diverse, often really challenging environments. It didn't need extensive training infrastructure or sophisticated maintenance depots, and it could often be obtained relatively easily, sometimes through official channels, sometimes not, contributing to its iconic status in all sorts of struggles for independence and social change around the globe.
Yeah, it's just been a fixture in conflicts across the globe. Vietnam, Afghanistan, countless civil wars. I mean, the list goes on and on. The sheer number of countries and non-state actors, too, who have used it and still use it today is just staggering. And the fact that it's manufactured in so many different nations, legally and illegally, and is a huge part of the illicit arms trade, it just underscores this pervasive global footprint it has.
Its enduring presence in so many conflicts really highlights its profound impact on modern warfare, there's no doubt. But its widespread availability has also, unfortunately, fueled and prolonged numerous conflicts. And its presence in the illicit arms trade poses massive challenges to global security efforts. It's a double-edged sword, absolutely.
Which brings us back to the man himself. This widespread use, often in ways Kalashnikov perhaps never intended, led to significant ethical concerns, didn't it? The rifle became associated with countless conflicts, immense suffering, just devastating consequences.
Yes. And Kalashnikov himself, especially in his later years, seemed to grapple with this. He reportedly expressed some remorse, or at least deep contemplation, over the impact his invention had unleashed on the world. There was that letter he wrote to the head of the Russian Orthodox Church near the end of his life, pondering his moral responsibility for the deaths caused by his weapon.
Right, I remember reading about that. But he also maintained, didn't he, that the rifle was designed purely for the protection of his homeland, not for offensive use or for terrorists.
He did. That was his consistent position. He saw it as a tool for defense, created in response to a specific threat during a specific time the threat Nazi Germany posed. He often deflected responsibility onto the politicians and others who decided how and where the weapon was used or distributed. It highlights the really complex ethical dilemmas surrounding not just the AK-47, but weapon design in general.
Absolutely. And beyond the battlefield, the AK-47 has seeped into global culture in some really fascinating ways, too.
Oh, definitely. There's even a Kalashnikov museum in Izhevsk, the city where it was primarily manufactured. In Western pop culture, it often gets stereotyped, right? It's the weapon of the bad guys, criminals, terrorists.
Yeah, very common trope.
But in many parts of the developing world, it holds a much more positive association linked with those revolutionaries and liberation movements we talked about. Think about films like Lord of War, which directly addressed its proliferation.
And there are some stranger examples, too, like the escopetar guitars made from decommissioned AK-47s as a peace symbol in Colombia, or its nickname in Mexico, Cuerno de Chivo, goat's horn, because of the curved magazine.
And perhaps most symbolically, it even appears on the flag of Mozambique. It was also on the former coat of arms of Burkina Faso. That tells you something about its cultural weight in certain regions.
So you see, for all its mechanical simplicity, the AK-47 is far, far more than just a weapon. It's a truly complex object, deeply intertwined with the turbulent history of the last century and more. It reflects technological innovation, brutal global conflict, political ideology, and the incredibly diverse ways a single design can be adopted, adapted, and interpreted across different cultures and conflicts.
Indeed. Understanding the AK-47, its history, and its creator really means understanding a significant thread in the whole tapestry of modern history. It's unavoidable.
Okay, let's just quickly recap some of the key points for you, our listeners. We've looked at Mikhail Kalashnikov's early life, that crucial wartime experience that sparked the AK-47's creation. We explored the core design principles, simplicity, reliability, the intermediate cartridge that led to its legendary status, and incredibly widespread adoption. It's fundamentally a story of ingenuity born directly from necessity.
And as we've discussed, it's also a story fraught with ethical questions and unintended consequences. A story that continues to shape the world in really significant, often tragic ways.
So here's a final thought to leave you with, something to mull over. Reflecting on Kalashnikov's stated intention to create a weapon purely for the defense of his homeland, how do you reconcile that original intent with the rifle's eventual global impact and the incredibly diverse, sometimes terrible hands it ended up in? Does the intent of the creator somehow absolve them of the consequences, or does the responsibility lie solely with those who choose to wield the tool? It's a complex question with no easy answer.
A very complex question indeed. Food for thought.
As this deep dive from the All Sorts podcast concludes, please remember that the pursuit of knowledge, it's a never-ending adventure. If you found this exploration into the life and legacy of Mikhail Kalashnikov and his iconic rifle compelling, just imagine the other fascinating territories we've already charted on the All Sorts podcast. Please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to the All Sorts podcast on YouTube. Your support truly fuels our ongoing expeditions into the realms of discovery.
So you do.
Delve into our back catalog for a real treasure trove of past deep dives, each one designed to ignite your curiosity. And for a constant stream of intriguing insights and maybe some behind-the-scenes glimpses, follow the All Sorts podcast on X, Instagram, and Threads. Keep that flame of inquiry burning brightly, and join us again soon for another journey into the heart of knowledge right here on the All Sorts podcast.